We just got something of a surprise phone call. We're glad to have him. We were trying to get him on the air today, and sure enough, he's here. The Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jason Miyares, joins us right now. Mr. Attorney General, good to have you on the show again.
I know there's some question about connecting with me, but I'm down in Southwest Virginia and Damascus delivering some hurricane relief supplies that we've collected, and it's just been remarkable, but great we're able to connect.
I'm glad we are. Since you're there, how is Southwest Virginia doing right now? Are people recovering from that storm?
They are. This is a remarkable, resilient, optimistic people. They're in rebuilding mode. So a lot of people that lost homes, but we're definitely in the path of rebuilding. And it's a great area down here. I encourage everybody to come down, visit Damascus, Virginia, and Abingdon, and some of these other great towns down in Southwest Virginia and Marion, and just a great area.
And one of the questions I get constantly from our audience is the implications for the election. Are you comfortable that people in Southwest Virginia are going to be able to continue to easily vote despite the damage there?
Yeah, I do. I mean, people are fired up election down here. We have power back, and so there's not going to be an issue of no polling. Polling stations not being able to be open because of a lack of power. Power's back, and people can early vote now at their voter registrar. So,
okay, good.
There's not going to be a problem hindering people to vote. Nothing that I've seen.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's talk about the vote, because that really is something that the national media is now fixed on. That's because the Biden administration on Friday sued the Commonwealth of Virginia because the Youngkin administration moved to say, hey, non-citizens, over 6,000 of them, who are on the voter rolls shouldn't be there, and said, look, you're no longer on the voter rolls. Only citizens can vote in elections. And yet the Biden administration is suing to put non-citizens back on Virginia's voter rolls. What are we to make of this?
It is beyond concerning that just within 30 days of an election, they are trying to pull something on a law that's been on the books. Since 2006 was the law signed by Tim Kaine, and not just Tim Kaine, but former Democratic governors like Ralph Northam and Terry McAuliffe all use this process. It's a law that says that we're required to remove non-citizens off our voting rolls. I know it shouldn't be controversial, this idea that non-citizens shouldn't be on our voting rolls and shouldn't be participating in determining who our leaders are, either in Virginia or determining who Virginia picks for president. And so these are individuals that voluntarily, they checked the box saying they were non-citizens with the DMV, and they told the DMV they weren't citizens. And then it's our job. We send them a letter saying if they're accidentally self-identified as a non-citizen, they have a period of time to correct that area. And if not, we're going to remove them from our voter roll. That is something that Democrat governors have done within that 90-day period prior to the election. There's absolutely, in our opinion, nothing controversial about it. We think it's what the law requires. They're basically trying to say that a law signed into law by a Democratic governor, practiced by Democratic governors, and then followed by Governor Youngkin is somehow improper. And so we look forward to our day in court. We're confident in our legal position, but the idea that they would be spending the time and resources on this, I think, tells you a lot about just how concerned they are. And I would probably argue how concerned they are about where Virginia is.
Given the short time frame we have now until the election, is it possible that the federal government could prevail and force non-citizens back onto the voter rolls?
That's probably one of the more remarkable things, is that the remedy they're seeking is to put people that have only been identified as actually citizens back on the voting roll, which has already happened. So an individual that maybe inadvertently checked the box as a non-citizen, and we confirm later they are a citizen, those individuals are back on the voting roll. So what is so interesting in all this is the remedy that they're seeking in their injunctive relief isn't putting non-citizens back on the voting roll. So it really seems to be they're more interested in generating a headline in some ways to attack Governor Youngkin and the administration than they are actually. I actually don't know what they're thinking, because listen, as the Attorney General of Virginia, we run technically the largest law firm in the state. It's about resources. It's about how are you utilizing your time.
Yes.
The fact that they're utilizing their time and resources in this front, I find in some ways baffling, to be quite honest with you.
I wonder why Virginia has been uniquely targeted here, or maybe it hasn't. But there are a number of states across the country that have followed Governor Youngkin's lead here. Alabama identified over 3,200 non-citizens on their voter rolls. Texas removed 7,000 non-citizens from their voter rolls this year. Ohio identified another 597 non-citizens as well. And previously, Georgia, a couple years ago, they had identified a little over 1,600 non-citizens on their voter rolls. This is happening across the country where states are going through and taking an inventory and saying, these are people who should not be among our registered voters.
Well, think about it. What your federal government is saying is it's against the law to remove non-citizens from voter rolls that are supposed to be open only to American citizens. I mean, that is kind of the upside down world we're living in the Biden-Harris administration. And so, I know that they are bringing, or they will likely bring, lawsuits in these other states as well. At least that's my expectation. I want to be clear as well. Several counties have brought to our attention that they have identified non-citizens on the rolls and forwarded that information to our office as well. So I don't know what their thinking is. We look forward to our day in court arguing. Again, this is a law that was put in place by Tim Kaine in 2006, and Governor Youngkin is, the last numbers I saw, I think it was about 6,300 that were removed. Every state's finding different folks, but I think everybody should want an election that's both clean, that's fair, that every American has confidence in. That should be what we all want, right? And that's the path moving forward. And so, kind of the standard I like to say is it should be easy to vote but hard to cheat.
Yes.
And I think one of the most important things should be making sure we have accurate voter rolls to make sure that we only have citizens participating in our elections.
Earlier in the program, we were speaking to the Fairfax County GOP chairwoman, Katie Gorka, about this too. And one of the things that came up is my understanding is that in order to be found guilty of violating federal law when it comes to voting in elections as a non-citizen, you have to knowingly do it. In other words, like you have to have some cognizance, some consciousness of your guilt as you're casting your ballot. Would it be feasible to change the way that people are instructed as they enter the ballot box that, hey, you have to be a citizen. You can't, if you're a non-citizen, you could be subjected to prosecution for voting in our elections.
Well, I mean, that's public information now.
Yeah.
As far as any type of specific instructions there, that would have to be something that potentially would have to be approved either by the Civil Rights section of the Justice Department or changed to the Virginia Code. But most individuals, I think, know that you cannot be a non-citizen to vote. But if they did, if there was an incident of that, then yeah, they could potentially be prosecuted for election fraud. And that is a violation in this country.
Yes.
That's part of what makes this so maddening is the fact that the Department of Justice, with all of the challenges they have at DOJ right now, this is the hill they want to die on, essentially saying to states, you don't have a right to remove people that have self-identified as non-citizens. This is not a case of individuals saying, we think maybe you aren't. No, these are people that have checked a box at DMV affirming, I am not a citizen of this country. And then they're essentially saying, even with that, you're not allowed to remove them off your voter roll. I think it says a lot about the misplaced priorities of the Biden Justice Department. It
says a great deal, and it's very abusive to certainly the people of Virginia and broadly the country. Before we let you go, just in your assessment as a guy who's elected as a Republican, how are you assessing the election right now? What are you seeing across the Commonwealth? I'm seeing a lot of these Republican leaning counties are showing up in big numbers. Are you encouraged?
Yeah, I am. I mean, the numbers are really encouraging. They do look a lot like, in many ways, what they looked like in 2021. I think there's a lot of interest in this election, rightly so. I saw a bumper sticker the other day that simply said, make groceries affordable again, right? I mean, in some ways, it's just harder to live in the Biden-Harris America that we now know. It's harder to put groceries in your kitchen. It's harder to put gas in your car. It's harder to pay your rent. It's harder to make a mortgage. I think the number I saw that when Donald Trump left office, the average household income in America to be a first-time home buyer needed to be $74,000. That number now is over $120,000
Wow.
Average household income to be a first-time home buyer. It's harder to go after that American dream. And the great irony of all this is when you hear the left talk about income inequality, one of the single largest for most Americans the single largest financial asset they have that they can pass on to their children is their home. It is by far and away the one that accrues the most value that they can then pass on to the next generation. When you're making it so hard to do home buying, we put up so many rules and regulations that make it so difficult to build homes, and therefore you have such constricted supply, and
Yes.
and it's that much more difficult to be a home buyer. You actually are exasperating income inequality. And the point I love to make is the states with the highest level of income inequality are blue states: California, New York, Massachusetts. Why? Because they have made it difficult to build homes. They made it difficult to create businesses and difficult to access capital.
Yes.
2/3 of all new jobs in America are created by small business owners. Well, big corporations like Amazon and Walmart and others, they can afford the best tax accountants and the tax lawyers to figure out how they're going to meet the regulatory burden. It's the small business owner, the entrepreneurs that create so much wealth in this country. They flee those blue states like California, New York. They come to states like Texas and Virginia, best state in the country to do business right now,
Yes.
South Carolina and Florida. They're fleeing those states. So that is a great irony. They are pushing the same policies that actually make income inequality worse, to make it harder for you to then pass on multi-generational wealth
Yep.
for the new generation. It is stunning for me what we have done in this country that have hurt so many in the middle class. And that's why you see so many individuals that are excited to go vote this fall. They know it's just hard to live in Biden's America.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And at the federal level, there's so much profligate spending that they drive up inflation, which means higher interest rates, which means your
Right.
mortgage is totally unaffordable. And so
Correct.
you're seeing it both at the
Correct.
state level and the federal level, and it's really exacerbating. You rightly point out this income inequality in the country at the hands of the left and their corporate sponsors.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. But, you know, Virginia is open for business. We're making sure we're going to have a great election in Virginia. We're going to protect our voter rolls. We're going to make sure businesses come here and thrive, and we're going to be successful.
The Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jason Miyares, thank you for spending some time with us today. Glad we could get you.